I vision God like driving a car and there's a bunch of kids, like religions in the back seat. He just like keeps turning back around. Come on, can you guys just get along back there? We fight over the same creator. It's silly.
Mm-hmm. Like look at the power that you could have and the beautiful things that you could create if you work together and connected. Welcome back to That's Church. I'm Emily Call, here with my sister, Ashley Sanders. And this is part 2 of our powerful conversation with Casey McFarland from Pioneering Paradox. In this episode, we dive into Casey's interfaith journey, what he learned from attending over 50 churches with his wife and kids, and how practicing curiosity and spiritual humility can deepen our faith and expand our love for others. We also reflect on the idea of a God who doesn't play favorites, and how being the most interested person in the room can change the way we approach people of all faiths. Casey shares insights from exploring sacred texts like the Bhagavad Gita and the Qur'an, and how they've helped him see truth and divinity beyond traditional boundaries. And yes, he's still leading amazing tours in Italy with his wife and planning a Superstition Tour with Patrick Mason. Don't miss this one. Let's go. What drew you to be more interested in other religions?
This is kind of funny. I grew up in a very curious home. My dad and mom were very faithful Latter-day Saints and also very unorthodox in some ways. My dad was a studier. He taught biology, history, drama, music. He did all these different top science, math, everything, and an alternative school. And so he was constantly learning. And he was constantly taking us places that were like to shake us out of just to kind of like, we traveled a lot, and we would go places where he would throw us into situations where he knew we were going to be uncomfortable. That was very much a part of my upbringing, and I have a lot of stories there. But also at the same time, he had a deep love for the mission. He served a mission in Denmark, so he took us to Scandinavia for a month when I was 14. And he was kind of like, we would go hopping different graves and stuff to find ancestors and things. And he just was constantly interested in this. And I don't know what happened, but I think I have the church to thank also for just kind of putting a spark spiritually into me as well. I didn't have any kind of spark really when I was a kid, except for Bob Marley. And,
yes.
Bob Marley, when I was 12, I used to plug in my headphones and go to church and listen to Bob Marley. It's very spiritual music, you know.
That's awesome. Amazing.
And I just am very curious. And my wife is too. When we were dating, we would go, this is terrible to say on the air, but we would go, when we were down at Snow College, we would go and spy on polygamists. We were fascinated with alternative. Like we would get on a 4-wheeler and we're like, oh, there's a family right there. We go peek. I shouldn't.
You're the reason why they're afraid of the world.
That's hilarious.
I'm just kidding. We can cut that.
And so, but my wife and I got very intrigued. Everywhere we'd go, we're drawn to the holy sites. Jerusalem's probably my favorite place I've ever been. I just like the tension and all that stuff. I'm just so fascinated by it. But you asked, earlier we were talking, or you sent some questionnaires, and one of the things, like, we take people on tours to Italy, and I always tell people, like, just be a Catholic for the next 10 days. Like, let's just like leave. Like, if you want to go to church or something, come earlier.
Yeah.
And go to the Latter-day Saint church somewhere. But we're going to Mass. We're going to learn about another culture, not bring our culture to them. And that is, to me, so much more important. Like, that we get to go to church every week. You know, you get to experience your own culture. But how often do you get to go another place and like learn about the world? 2/3 of the world wakes up every morning with some religious belief system. And you're like, if you don't understand religion and have a curiosity for religion, I don't think you can understand humans. And I think that's a big start in understanding humanity to a certain degree, is diving into belief systems. And it just so happens to be that when you travel, a lot of these places are free. And they're some of the most interesting places to go to. So we've been to probably, I think, this isn't just out abroad, but we took our kids in the middle of the faith issue, and we're like going, oh my gosh, we don't know what to do with our faith right now. I'm like, I don't want to just abandon Sunday altogether. So we took a sabbatical for a couple of years and just went to like 50 different churches everywhere, and with the kids. And we were able to say, look, see how they do dumb things too? See how they do amazing things too? Like you start to kind of go, I remember my son was like 10. He's like felt guilty going to another church. And we're like, but after a couple times, he just like, I have a holy envy for coffee hour. And you go into coffee and just sitting there talking with people. They're like, these are just people.
Yeah.
You know? They're just, I mean, we're sharing, we have more in common than we don't, you know? And anyway, it's a long answer.
I just remembered too, that's awesome. I just remembered that the friends that I went with to New York on my senior trip are no longer members of the church.
Now
And
they
they
would
were
go.
so worried about going into this Catholic church. That never had dawned on me before.
You and your wife both have that passion, because I think it can be a little trickier when it's just one.
For sure.
You know, one of the spouses.
Yes,
so
for sure.
That is, and your children are having, I can't imagine the beautiful tapestry you guys have created for your children, as far as them knowing that they can ask you questions and also that they can compare those beliefs. I think that that's such a beautiful thing. Even, you know, even if they leave the church or stay, for them to know why people do what they do and why all religions are important, that's huge. Like that is huge, because there are, I'm sure, still a large handful of members who think it's a sin to even look at other churches, or even worse, they feel bad for them. There's so much pity there. Like, oh, if only they had truth. Well, they do. and maybe it's not truth to you, but it's truth to them, and that should be honored.
Mm-hmm.
And for, the verdict is still out. Maybe we just confused them really bad, or maybe did them a huge favor. I don't know. But I look at, like, in our own tradition, you look at the Quorum of the 12 and the First Presidency, they're meeting with other religions constantly. Mm-hmm. I don't know why this hasn't trickled down. When we had the tsunami happen in Indonesia like a while back, we donated like thousands of Qur'ans to the people there. We have actually built into our theology a very open ability there. There's a permission slip to be able to do far more than we're doing. And the permission slip is coming straight from the top down. And that's why I'm like going, why are we like, if I could, I would pick up my entire congregation once a year, take them over to the Baptist, take them to the Episcopalian, take them to a Holy Roller church, whatever. Like, we had a neighbor that lives right behind me over here. We took the kids to the Lutheran church one day. I didn't know he was Lutheran. His wife was a Latter-day Saint, and she was always apologizing. Sorry, he's not a member. We're like, it's okay. Anyway, we go to church, and I'm like, look who's sitting right in front of us is our backdoor neighbor. It was like an instant bond. Instant. Wow. Like, well, he turned around. He's like, why? He's like, I can't even tell you how much this means to me that you guys are here. And our other neighbors was Presbyterian. Was like, hey, we want to come to your church. We want to come and visit with you guys. And they were waiting for us outside of their church. And she literally ran to us in the parking lot and just embraced us. Like, I can't tell you how much this means to us, because we spend so much time like trying to make these people Mormon that we literally, I would love, one thing I would love to have happen, does never happen, is like, let's do an experiment for the next 5 years. Let's not do any missionary work, and let's just appreciate people for who they are. And I think missionary work would take off. They're like, oh my gosh, these people make me feel important. It's like, who's the most interesting person in the room is the one most interested. And we're so often like trying to give other people our knowledge without just going, what do you have to give us?
Amen.
I see God like literally just like going to all the religions. You're my favorite. You're my favorite. You're like a parent does to their all the kids think they're their favorite kid. But they're, I don't know.
Totally.
Oh, that's a great analogy. Yeah, we all think we're the best and the favorite, and he loves us all. I mean, the LDS Church is a small portion of the world. And I think Patrick Mason was the one who said, I don't believe in a stingy God. Yes. You know, God is not going to withhold their love from us. And it's just, that is such a great reminder. It really is. Yeah. I love that so much.
I think I've said all those things before. I don't understand why it is. And it's actually so visible that the leaders of our church are meeting with other religions.
The church
But yet,
week, right?
yeah, and they're not going to these other religions and saying you should become LDS. No, they're just meeting with them, being respectful, paying respects, doing what they can to help, learn about whatever it seems to me. And so why are we scared as the people of the church? Why do we think it's not acceptable? I think one of our articles of faith talks about, what is it? Now I can't think of it.
Yeah, I know it crossed my mind too, and I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Anyway,
yeah,
that we want all truth and all, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know why we're scared.
And we send a kid, we don't expose them to anything. Then we send them on a mission.
Yeah.
And they were like, here, go, and like get exposed to everything all at once. My mission president lives in Italy, and he came and visited a few years ago, and somebody asked him, what would you do to prepare your kids more than anything, like for a mission? He said, kids come into the mission field completely unprepared culturally.
Mm-hmm.
They do not know how to respect another culture, because there's been in this like bubble their whole life. And that's that's something my dad did very, very well for me, was just expose me to as much stuff as possible, like deliberately, and I think it was really an easy transition for me going on a mission. And anyway,
that's awesome. Yeah. My mission was really hard for me, and we weren't exposed to as much. And so I'm trying really hard to do that with our kids. But yeah, it's not always easy.
Yeah.
I have a quick comment just before we move on too. I just wanted to mention, I love what you said about like doing a test and like not sending out missionaries, because people would still feel loved. They just wouldn't feel that kind of disingenuous, like, I want you as a number on my baptism, which I'm not going to say that's how all missionaries are. Yeah. But because that's not true. But it's so interesting to me. Of all of the churches that we visited, I had the expectation that we were going to be, people were going to be trying to convert us. Yeah. It happened 0 times. Like 0. I think there was one guy in one congregation that still sends me some Jesus videos, but it's not in a sense that he wants me to even, it's more of just a friendship we've built. Sure. And so it's really, there's been no like, hey, sign up here, come back. It's more just like, you're always welcome. We're so happy that you came. And I just thought, oh, it's just us.
Yeah, we are such a proselyting
We are the most proselyting, and I did not know that. I think I was just very ignorant to that.
That's awesome. We went to a church. It was right the day before Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We were in Phoenix, and we're like, listen, and we went to a black church, all black church. And and we sat in the middle it was me and my kids and with my wife, and then my friend and his wife and kids. And there's like 12 of us, like Mormons, right in the middle of this congregation. They stopped the meeting. The pastor stopped and turned everybody, the entire congregation, surrounded us with their arms open wide. I'm getting emotional just even talking about it. And the whole place in unison just said, we welcome you to our church with full and open arms. And it was just so beautiful. And so I see like, if, I don't know, I do. I think that if all we did was just appreciate people for who they are and try to see them for who they are, like missionary work would go through the roof, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But
I teach gospel doctrine in my ward, and I asked to be in Young Women's because my daughter is in Young Women's, and so it's not even official yet, but I should be in there. But now I'm kind of sad because I really wanted to have like the like one of the leaders that we've met to come and speak just during one of my lessons, and just be like, surprise, here's the imam from the Islam Center, or whatever, and just have them speak to us. And I'm kind of bummed that I missed that opportunity, but I'm still going to push for things, maybe talk to the Relief Society president, or, because I think that is so valuable for people to just learn about other people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be in a religious context, but just learn about people that are different than us, different than you, I think is so valuable.
Yeah.
And all of that is what Jesus taught. Like, Jesus taught to love our neighbors. And I think we look at that in such a defined, in a box kind of way, and it can be so much bigger. If we just break outside of that box, it can be so much bigger and purer and more genuine than it is.
Plus, he was constantly trying to shatter cultural norms.
Yeah.
He was constantly like, hey, by the way, that Samaritan that you guys hate over there, like, he's better than you. And by the way, my cousin over there that's wearing a loincloth and eating grasshoppers, like, I'm going to have him baptize me.
Yeah.
He's the greatest prophet in all the land. Like, just constantly shattering norms. And I
biases
think
and sorry.
Anyways, so I look at it and I go, oh my gosh, like, can you imagine the force for good that could happen if we all banded together instead of like put up walls?
Yeah.
Like, I need to convince you of mine. We're going to have this battle instead of just going, actually 90% of the things we believe are the same. Maybe we're all wanting the same thing, to make the world better, to help people, all this stuff. Like, we are drastically underutilizing a tremendous amount of human capital when we're like trying to put up walls between religions. It's going back to the analogy of like God, like it'd be like God's like I vision God like driving a car and there's a bunch of kids like religions in the back seat, and he just like keeps turning back around. Come on, can you guys just get along back there? Like, you know what I mean? True. It's like silly. It's silly that we fight over the same creator. It's silly.
Mm-hmm. Like, look at the power that you could have and the beautiful things that you could create if you work together and connected. You seem to know quite a bit about the Bhagavad Gita. I just say it the way I'm going to say it. You seem to know quite a bit about the Bhagavad Gita and the Qur'an. What insights do you have for us?
Well, the Bhagavad Gita is actually really doesn't take long to read, so I recommend anybody read it. And it's similar to the Book of Mormon in that it's like it takes place in a battlefield. It's an analogy, it's a war analogy, and I'll tell you the big takeaway that I get. Besides, like, I read Gandhi's biography, and Gandhi just he loved the Sermon on the Mount, but he considered the Bhagavad Gita to be like supreme, and I'm like, well, that makes me really curious. Also, Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, like, honestly, I think so many of their writings, Walden and all this stuff, is really a readaptation for Christians in Christian language, so much of the Bhagavad Gita. Like, I think they just took it and they repurposed the language so that we could understand it from a Western perspective. Mm-hmm. So just throwing that out there, because Emerson and Thoreau's writings are very, very profound. And we look at them, they're quoted in General Conference all the time. Mm-hmm. But I look at the Bhagavad Gita, and one of the biggest things that I take away from it is the notion that there's this battle going on, and Arjuna is one of the characters, and he's talking with Krishna, and he's deliberating so deeply that he's like getting caught up into the outcome. And one of the big takeaways for me is that it's kind of like the conversation they're having kind of ends up being like, why are you so worried about the outcome? So there's a very deep, and this scripture is really, really old, but there's a deep idea here to just put out the best you can and let the outcome take care of itself. And actually, this is kind of was very inspirational for me when it came to my own Instagram account, where I'm like going, I don't know, what are people going to think about this? The Bhagavad Gita was kind of my resource to go, I don't care. Like, I'm just going to put out what I feel in my heart and let the outcome take care of itself. I don't have control over that. So I see that as being a really strong point of the Bhagavad Gita, among many other things, because it goes into yoga as a spiritual practice. Yoga, Madonna is really kind of who introduced yoga to Oprah Winfrey, like in the 90s. Like that's like our starting point for yoga. Huh. But it becomes like a very physical thing in our thing. But yoga literally means to yoke. Religion and yoga mean almost the same thing. Yoga means to yoke yourself, to bind yourself to God or to your soul. And there's like a lot that goes on. The physical part of it is just one aspect of like getting yourself into a physical place to spiritually be prepared to yoke yourself to God. And so it goes into a lot of those concepts in the Bhagavad Gita. Like I say, when you buy a Bhagavad Gita, they're like this thick, and this much of it's commentary, and this much of it is the actual Bhagavad Gita. So wow. I bypass the commentary altogether and just go straight to the actual source.
Well, that's good to know. I bought one and I tried to read it, and I was like, I don't know.
Don't read the commentary. Just go right to the thing.
Yeah,
good to
and
know.
then you can maybe afterwards start looking at some YouTube videos or something like that and kind of dig into it. That's my extent of the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. But I will tell you this. I have tried to repurpose the Book of Mormon the same way as I read the Bhagavad Gita. Rather than like going all, I try different hats on. For a while, I didn't go into our own scripture for a while. It was just too triggering for me. And then I kind of went through a period of time where I spent, you know what, I can go and view things. Like I've been a photographer for over 20 years. And I started trying to view my own tradition and my own scripture like I would go on site as a National Geographic photographer. Because that's how I view the Bhagavad Gita. That's how I view the Qur'an. I'm like curious. I'm like, I don't have any preconceived notion of what this is supposed to be. And again, the Book of Mormon, I think we're setting kids up for failure by telling them, this is the answers you're supposed to get out of it. This is what you're supposed, and somebody says something really beautiful. You don't listen to beautiful music and ask whether this is true or not. And that is what we've set kids up for. Like, oh, you need to read this so that it becomes a trophy of whether that's true, the church is true or not. Instead of, what is this thing? What is this? How is this thing moving me inside and trying to rid myself of ego and all these, and helping me love people more? And I had to retrain myself to think of the Bhagavad Gita and the Book of Mormon almost in the same vein that way, if that makes any sense. But I think the Qur'an, I think so much, the Qur'an, I think, is so important for us to read, like, rather than like, just be like, to me, it's like, the more you're like question something or you have like fear about something, the more you should run towards it. Unless it's like a murder or something like that.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yes. So,
I love that.
With distinction. But I started reading the Qur'an because I'm like going, we went through the war in Iraq and all this stuff, and like there's all this fear mongering on Fox News and Muslims are this and Muslims are that. I'm going, all right, well, I want to go and dig in. Like this is exactly what happens to our own tradition. People think they know who we are and they don't. So the best thing to do is go to the source and find out, where does all this come from, Yeah. Anyway.
I love your Buddhist approach to all of that too. The empty your cup. You're reminding me of all of these Buddhist parables that just make me so happy. I'm telling you, we could talk all day.
We could.
Yeah, the empty your cup. I think it's the sensei says, put your cup out to the student, and he puts his cup out, and it's half full, and the sensei, you could correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but he like pours on it, and the kid, the student's like, oh, it's overflowing. And the master says, that's because you didn't empty it first. You need to empty it so that you're coming in clean slate, so that you have the vessel to carry the wisdom I'm going to bestow on you. So I love that you approach other religions like that, and that you approached your own religion like that. That is huge. That was a total shift in me when you said that, because I try, on this journey that we're on, that Emmy and I are on, we are trying to go in clean slate to all of these religions, but I haven't done that in my own religion. That's
where the
so,
fruit, the major fruit is.
yeah. Oh man, that was
Closest
big.
to home. And I like, and by the way, it took me a while to get to that place, because I was like, I didn't want to, like, I was hired to go take pictures at a funeral, a Latter-day Saint funeral, right in the middle of a big faith crisis. And I literally just I just kind of prayed, and I went in with the meditation, just going, you know what? I'm going to try a different hat on. Because, and that's the thing. I literally went into the funeral with, as an observer, and tried to not make past judgment on anything, and not have meaning, that all this baggage of meaning that I had through my whole life. And I wept the entire time. This woman was so beautiful, and there's all these quilts and stuff, and I'm like going, how beautiful is all this from an outside observation. And so going into the doctrine of emptiness, with Buddhism, they have a literal doctrine called emptiness, where this is going, again, like getting rid of the meaning we've placed on everything. The beautiful idea of when you empty your cup is that almost always the first thing to rush in is compassion. And so when you give something a different, like when you unlabel something and you wipe it clean of the meaning maybe you gave it, like, I would ask people just to experiment with this, like try a different hat on and say, this is how I've looked, and I'm angry at the church, or I'm angry at my mom or my dad or somebody, and start like the practice of like emptying your mind and going, I'm going to try to look at this from a different angle. And that's a very deep Buddhist concept, and anyway.
I love that. We just talked about this on Sunday, and someone mentioned kind of asking their parents questions that they haven't asked before, because they see them differently. And I thought, yeah, it's so important to zoom out, like zoom out of what we have, all these preconceived ideas that we have, and these expectations that we have.
Yeah.
And to be able to look at it with fresh eyes, complete fresh eyes. It's so true. You mentioned at one point that it's so much harder to give grace to people that are within our own religion. We go to these other religious entities, and we're like, it's so beautiful, and we're able to just take it in and give them grace and be okay with who they are, because they're totally different than us. But it's so much harder to give grace to the people that we know how they grew up. We know what they're supposed to be, or what the expectation for them is. And so it's so much harder to give grace to. But I think if we zoom out and we clean the slate and look at it differently, I think that is going to help so many of our listeners. Like you said, in reading the Book of Mormon with a totally new perspective. I love that. I've been reading the Qur'an, and it's beautiful. And there's pieces of it I really like, and pieces I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And if I could do that with the Book of Mormon and not have such this heavy weight, that comes with it, that like, this is your salvation, and just zoom out and be like, this is an interesting book. How does it make me feel? How does that help me be a better person? How does that help me love deeper? How does that help me connect with God or Christ or Heavenly Mother, or, whatever it is. I love that. I love that idea. I think that will help. Yeah. So many people that are struggling or not, just help us to get to that next level, the next level of our spirituality, wherever we're at,
Yeah. Interestingly enough, the Book of Mormon was not intended to like be a trophy. And it's like we've somehow we've purposed it to be like a signifier that the church is true. And you're like, that is actually in the very introduction, that's not actually what it's meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of in some ways taking it back,
And there are scriptures that will be brought forth So who's to say those scriptures aren't the Qur'an or the Bhagavad Gita or, like there are scriptures, the Dead Sea Scrolls is, like something we're like, ooh, this is exciting and different. Oh, also Mary Magdalene and also, like all of these other apocryphy or whatever, like those are all scriptures we could learn from and we could gain insight and wisdom and knowledge. Anyway, we could go on.
Yeah, we could. I
forever.
know our time's getting close, but I wanted to just say this. This is something that I don't recommend everybody do, but this is just my own story that maybe somebody can glean something from. When I went into a faith crisis, I kept it silent to my wife for 8 years. And I was like, just afraid to talk to her about it. This is a large reason why I'm so adamant about like, opening these conversations and letting people feel safe, because it was a very lonely struggle.
Wow.
And so I went through a period of anger, all sorts of different stuff. And then my wife kind of went through her own thing. And it just was like, what do we do here? After a little while, when I started understanding shadow work and understanding that a lot of our triggers happen because of meaning we've placed around things, I actually decided that the best place for me, I know this is not for everybody, was to go back and sit in sacrament meeting. And I kind of in my own, I didn't tell anybody about this, but I'm going to go sit in here every week until I understand why I don't like these people. And it wasn't that I wasn't liking people, but it was behaviors of judgmental sayings of like, oh, those people are talking about LGBTQ people or whatever it was that was happening that was triggering me. I wanted to find out, and because the concept of the shadow was that this is probably something you don't like in yourself. And I'm like, yeah, the thing I didn't like and the reason I was triggering so bad is because I was like, I used to say those things. I used to do those things. I used to act that way sometimes. Understanding that, just little by little, I started to love those and embrace those parts of me where I just went, I'm judgmental. Like I am sometimes say stupid things. I am all of these people. And so if I'm hating them, then I'm hating myself. And the concept in Buddhism where you're kind of going, we're, this oneness that we have, like there is a beautiful, in Hinduism, they have something called the Param Atman. The Atman is your soul. The Param Atman is like a connectiveness to all. It's like the Force in Star Wars or whatever. It's like the one group of people that I'm alienating myself from. And that actually is making me not one with everybody. That doesn't mean I have to go and and stay a part of them. But when I do that inner work to kind of like come back around to go, these people are just as good as the Buddhists or the Presbyterians or anything. They're just like any other group of people. And I can love them too and make them a part of my world as well. Then I have the capacity to be able to like let them into my space again and be a part of their space. And so we live in a very Latter-day Saint community. I did not want my kids growing up like being, we don't talk to those people. My in-laws, my father-in-law's a patriarch. I'm like, I want my kids to be able to navigate their own faith while respecting the faith that we as part of our heritage at the same time. And that's a really difficult work, but a very fruitful one, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Wow. I love the reflection part of that. I think that is so important for people to remember. That is beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. You're full of so much wisdom. This is going to be an awesome podcast.
It was more pain than wisdom, maybe. It's like pain drives you to kind of like to introspection and go, I have to figure out what's going on with myself. Yeah. Maybe that'll help somebody else if I can figure this out, because I went through a lot of years of depression and pain trying to figure out what is happening with this.
That's a long time to sit in that alone.
Yeah.
That's really difficult. I don't suggest doing that ever. And I'm glad you got through it and you were able to reach out to people and kind of be more honest with yourself and others as well.
Yeah.
One time I had an experience at church once that I remember I was sitting back like in the foyer or something, and there were people at the front. I think it was the choir. and I looked at them and I was like, ugh. And I preach love a lot. Like
Yeah.
I talk about love all the time, everywhere I go. And I remember looking at the people and being so judgmental. Like I was just picking people out like, oh, she's this and he's that and da 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 da. And I caught myself doing it just in my mind. And I was like, Emily, what is wrong with you? Why are you being so judgmental? And then I had a moment of like, okay, look at them like Jesus would look at them. And the way that we frame Jesus to be is completely unconditional, and he loves them no matter what. And so I looked at each individual person and I really envisioned loving them in that capacity. And I suddenly just started crying. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're all so beautiful. And they're all such great people. And how did I not see that? How did I not see these beautiful things that God can see in these people? And it kind of maybe a similar come to God moment for me that you had. I kind of realized, okay, there are all these faults in myself and in other people as well. And that's just the reality of it. But there's also so much beauty in every single person. And we can see it. We can choose to see that, or we can choose to not. And that's the difference between, I think, our own peace and our own stability, emotional stability, and not.
That's so beautiful. And really what it boils down to is that and this goes, most kids by the time they're 30, like 70% of the youth in our community leaves the church or doesn't attend any longer.
Wow.
So I would just like to propose that we look at that differently and go, what if pride is the real enemy, whether it's on either decide to stay or go or whatever. People having pride towards their kids who have left the church, like they don't know what they're doing, they've studied something wrong or whatever. And people having pride going, I can't believe somebody would stay in the church and I know better for them. The truth is everybody's having their own experience and it might be what they need. But if you reframe everything, if we reframe at the root of all wisdom traditions is this concept that we need to learn to let go of illusion, whether you're in the church or out of the church, and let go of pride and ego, and whatever that's named, that becomes something. Actually, if my kids decide they're going to go to a different church or not go to church at all, we can still talk about, hey, like how are we letting go of hate and anger and all that stuff, that illusion. That becomes a common ground among all religions, among our children or our kids who stay or leave, whatever. That to me is a real fruitful commonality that I would love to see more focus on, rather than like you're in, you're out, whatever, instead of just like, no, we're just trying to figure out life together. And it's painful. And Kim, I'm going to mourn with you and you can mourn with me. And there's going to be hard times, because really when something big happens, like a death in the family, all that stuff goes out the window for a minute and we go, all right, we need to jump in and be with each other and help each other out at this time, anyway.
Yeah. Drop the labels, I think. All the labels. They're just not necessary. We're just people.
I ever did. I did a deliberate effort when I was Elders Quorum president like 10 years ago. I'm like, I'm going to stop using and thinking in terms of my neighbors as Mormon, non-Mormon. And it like changed I felt like it changed my whole neighborhood. Just
that story about your Lutheran neighbor had me tearing up, and I just wish there was more of that. And when you say mourn with those that mourn, I mean, that was what Christ was all about. And I don't remember who said this quote, but it's basically like, church should be a hospital for sinners, not a museum for saints. Like, we need to recognize that we're all healing. We're all dealing with real life things. And something that I noticed with other churches that we visited is people were more open to talking about their struggles. And it was so connecting. I mean, I felt bonded to complete strangers, somebody talking about financial struggles. I've never heard anyone in our church talk about having a financial struggle. And that's just one example, but I just remember thinking like, oh, wow, that's big. That
The vulnerability.
Being vulnerable. There's nothing that bonds me to someone quicker than someone opening up and being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Amen. I think that's so crucial. But I love what you guys are doing. It's fun to watch you guys interview all these different people and bring different perspectives in, because it is really such a beautiful and needed thing to run towards things we don't understand, build bridges, build community. I don't think there's anything better you could be doing right now.
Thank you.
That
it's
is
hard
so kind.
sometimes, so it's nice to hear that. I mean, it's just a lot of work, but it's so amazing. It's my favorite thing I've ever done, honestly.
Amazing.
Because we just have gained so much wisdom, and I don't know if that comes through, but I mean, we've received so much light and knowledge and goodness from other people. And it's just been incredible. We do want to ask you, we want to respect your time, and I'm sorry we're a little bit over.
Oh, we're good. We're good. I don't want to just bore anybody with my.
Okay. No, you're amazing, and this has been incredible. But we want to ask you our kind of fun last question. We like to kind of lighten it up at the end. So Ashley likes to ask this one. Go ahead, Ash.
That's the one question Emmy allows me. Just kidding. I'm just joking.
She's allowed the last
I'm allowed. So for this final question, we just wanted to ask you to either share an embarrassing moment, or you can answer this fun little question of what time frame would you live in or visit if you could? What different space and time would you visit? Or you can answer both. Pick one, answer both.
I told my wife about this question, and I'm like, I'm going to refrain from my most embarrassing moment till the second. No, I'm just kidding.
Smart.
No, I have a lot. My wife's like, you got to be careful with that. Anyway, I had this
scary
English
one.
teacher. I'll answer both of them real briefly. But I have this English teacher who was a Baptist, and I got to be friends with her. Her husband was a Baptist preacher. This was like 20 years ago. And I found out that she was a Baptist. I'm like, hey, I want to come out and check out your church. Anyway, I called her up one day just because I had and she was an English teacher at the university up here, and I had a question about the assignment, and I got done talking with her. I left a message on her phone, and I ended, in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
That's the worst.
What did I just do? So stupid. And that is like one of, like, I have dozens of stupid things.
That's very applicable for
that is so
this
good
conversation too.
Yeah, my wife said that's probably more appropriate for this audience.
There's so many, you could filter it down to something that worked.
I'm going to just make a plug here for Will and Ariel Durant. They were a husband-wife team, wrote for over 50 years, from like 1930 to like 1970 something. They wrote the story of civilization in an 11-volume set. They went from ancient Greece to ancient Egypt to ancient Rome to the Renaissance to the whole world. They spent their whole life. This used to be quoted in General Conference a lot.
Wow.
My wife and I have dug in and read a bunch of them. They're like 55 hours long on Audible, each one of them. They're huge, but they're written so well. But the time period that I was like drawn to, that I was like, I want to see this so bad, because that's my biggest desire on the entire planet, is to be able to push a button and go see things in history as they happened. It's like, it almost makes me feel like I'm scratching my fingers on a chalkboard because I want it so bad. Is ancient Egypt. Like the way it's described in this, and we take people on group tours to Italy every year. That's where we spend 2 months a year in Italy. And you can trace back, Rome stole from Greece, Greece stole from Egypt, and you can go almost backwards in how they just stole from one empire to the next. And Egypt just is so mesmerizing to me that I don't know. It just sounds like it would be incredible to go back and witness how things were done, you know?
Yeah. Kind of scary too.
Yeah.
Probably. You'd have to be the right person in ancient Egypt.
Go back
know what
as
I mean?
Pharaoh.
Be a
Yeah.
pharaoh.
Well,
But
like,
sometimes that's not
yeah.
good either.
I want to
true.
just be invisible.
Okay. There
That's
you
how I
go.
want to approach this. I want to go and be invisible, but I want to be able to eat,
Yeah.
but not get sick. I want to be invisible, but I'm immune to sickness.
Ooh,
That's how I want to do it.
I
Yeah.
like it.
Maybe
Yeah.
like a fly
that
on the
is-
wall.
Yes.
You can
Yeah.
still
Just-
eat. No one notices you, but you die
Just
quickly.
witness it.
So
Yeah,
I don't
maybe
know.
not a fly.
Yeah.
I don't know how I knew you were gonna say Egypt, but I knew you were gonna say Egypt. This is weird. I don't know why, but
We're
I will
Libra.
say it's the Libras. We
Yep.
can sense it. No,
What's your birthday? You dare say
it's
that much.
what did you say?
What's your birthday?
October 1st.
Mine's September 24th.
Oh, you're on the young end of the Libras.
I went to kindergarten when I was 4. I was dumb as rocks for like 8 years.
Oh, my kids are all the oldest in their grade because my kids are all around the same birth date as mine, and I'm like, you guys have to be the older because I don't want to make you guys the youngest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to say my kids have been fascinated by Egypt recently, so we've been watching a bunch of
Oh, so
history
cool.
channel Egyptian stuff. I put it on for my kids thinking like
Fascinating.
I'll let them watch it, and I sit and watch it with them because I cannot look away. It is fascinating, and the fact that women were so honored there as well. Like
Yeah.
there's so many things that I'm the same. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to know what it means and what the rituals mean.
Yeah.
And I've actually recently, I've thought I need to find. So I'm gonna look up that book you were talking about because I wanted
Will
to
and
learn
Ariel
more.
Durant. The story is like 11 volumes. I found the whole volume set at the DI one day.
Wow.
Dude, what a find!
Anyway. It's on Audible.
That's cool.
So,
Okay,
anyway.
good to know.
We'll
Making
have to
a
look
note of
into
that.
it. I'm sad we didn't get to hear more about your tours too. I just want to ask you, so you do tours in Italy 2 months out of the year. I'm super jealous. Do you always go to the same places, and is it religious focused, or is it just I mean, I don't know how you can be in Italy and not have some religion. Is it just historical? Is it building? What is
people get religious, like, okay, so I served a mission in Italy. That's why I speak the language, but we have lived there quite a bit since and been there quite a bit since. And so we built a tour out. We have one, Tuscany and Rome, that whole Umbria, that whole area. We have a villa that we take people to. But when we talk about Rome and Florence, I tell people straight up, just be prepared, even if you don't like religion, because it's going to be a big theme. But I really try to tie it back to, I had one guest where we went to to Florence, and I try to tie the Renaissance back to the friction that is happening. I don't see it any different than what's happening today. The internet age and the Renaissance are so similar. There were, Da Vinci and Michelangelo's parents would have been like, oh my gosh, these kids are going off the deep end. And it kind of helps put things into perspective. I had one lady say, this really helped me to understand my wayward kid. To be able to see that this happens throughout history and these people turn out fine and all this stuff is a big theme of the Renaissance, and this friction between humanism and religion and is still very much alive in Florence. And that is a huge theme. So I go through a whole thing and take people to locations where people were burned at the stake and the friction between art and religion that Michelangelo had and Botticelli. Then they burned a lot of art because they were feeling like they were getting too pagan. There's all sorts of there's a lot of paradox there that really was the elements of the recipe for a beautiful flowering of art and creativity. So I love that friction. Rome, we get deep into the beginnings of Catholicism and the transfer of power between the Roman Empire to the Catholic Church, and almost the shift from emperor to pope. Like there's so much going on there in the early years that is wildly fascinating. And I'll tell you that right now, I probably told you that I'm going to the Living School right now. It's a year-long program with Richard Rohr, Brian McLaren, Barbara Holmes, James Finley. There's a few other, but and that we go into the the Christian elders that fled into the desert and wrote a lot prior when the Rome kind of took over. They fled into the desert and wrote a ton about early Christianity that doesn't resemble Catholicism at all. It's very, very fascinating. And I love Catholicism, don't get me wrong. But so we take people there, but then we have a tour. We take people down to southern Italy. There's a whole nother animal. And a thing we love about taking people there spiritually is the further below Rome you get, the more superstition and the more religious people become. It's deeper poverty, it's deeper whatever, but it is very, very superstitious and very, very intense. So we take people to the city where St. Nicholas is buried. I shouldn't say that out loud. That's the Santa Claus, so he is dead. And so I hope there's no listeners that I'm going to burst.
Kids, cover your ears.
The actual St. Nicholas is buried in this church.
Wow.
And the superstition around that is just wild and fascinating. So, but we're taking a group to Greece and actually to Egypt in 2026. And I can't announce, I'll announce that one to you off air because I have a special guest that's going to be, I'm taking on there.
So if people want, is the tour open to people signing up, or do you have
I'm all booked up I have one slot left for this fall. We're going to be there in October. It's Southern Italy. We have one slot left for Southern Italy. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. But Greece is already booked up for next year. Egypt is going to be open. And then I have open for next year for Italy too. It's McFarland. I don't even know my website name. McFarlandTours.com. And I have an Instagram that's McFarland Tours, something like that. I kind of book them up behind the scenes, so I don't advertise them.
Okay, we'll put them in our show notes.
It's wide open. I love, anybody wants to do that. It's fun. They're super fun. Small groups, 14 people. That's all we take.
Wow,
that's awesome.
That's very intimate, and I'm sure that it's incredible.
I have drivers. Food's all included. I have the best food on the planet. I know exactly everything. So we go. Wow. It's all dialed in. So you show up and you're under my wing, and it's awesome.
That is incredible.
Sign us up.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to have you on again to talk about all of these tours, just that topic, because all of it, you have too much wisdom. I feel like we really could go a long time.
Stuff that we could go into the Renaissance, anything it's very, very pertinent to our day right now.
Thanks for listening to That's Church and for joining us for part 2 of our conversation with Casey McFarland. His interfaith journey is a reminder of how much we can learn when we listen to others with curiosity and respect. We're so honored that Casey has joined our That's Church nonprofit board, and we're excited to keep building spaces where faith, community, and connection can thrive across all belief systems. Don't forget to follow Pioneering Paradox and check out the episode where Ashley and I were guests. We had a blast, and the conversation was so meaningful. Follow us on Instagram at That's Church Podcast for updates, and we are soon going to release a new website and information about our new nonprofit. So be sure you follow. Thanks so much. See you soon.